Political power shifts have made the internet and digital technologies increasingly political, casting doubt on the vision of a globalized digital world. How can foreign politics and international cooperation help to reduce the risks of digital fragmentation while leveraging the chances of connectivity? What are the effects for our societies resulting from global competition for technological and political power? Is the Internet of the future going to be a patchwork of national solutions? And can foreign politics reshape these trends of decoupling? Decoupling the Internet. Taking sides or chances?
Good morning and welcome to the audience, and thank you for joining us. Thank you, Mariana. My name is Christoph Röckerath. I'm a South America correspondent for ZDF German TV, based in Rio de Janeiro. And a few years before that, I was also reporting from the Caribbean and Latin America. I will shortly introduce our panel, but before that, just let me give a quick and brief introduction to our discussion. It is brief, but it starts a very long time ago. In 1837, the German economist Friedrich List wrote a glowing article praising the arrival of the steam railway network in continental Europe that was just happening. He wrote, "It's a Hercules in his cradle who will rid humankind from the plague of war and violent nationalism." He went on saying that now that we can travel to each other on such high speeds, information will flow freely, as will we. It will be the end of prejudice and intolerance. People of all colors will mix. It will become a true era of common sense and civilization. Of course, he was wrong, and so were those who entertained similar thoughts with the arrival of the internet and then social media. The internet, just like probably any other technology, is not inherently good or bad, but it's a tool, the nature of which depends on the intentions of those using it. Right now, it's at the center of a process of separation, a potential Cold War between the USA and China. Both nations have achieved tremendous advancements in the field of information technology, advancements that affect and also benefit the whole world. However, they also show the dark side of it, developments that are not in the interest of free societies. Just two examples for that. Right now, in the USA, we see two different realities. One where the current president clearly and provenly lost an election, and one where millions of people truly believe that he was cheated out of it. China, on the other hand, shows how far information technology and the internet can be perfected to enable a totalitarian control over its people. I'm mentioning these examples because they show that, aside from all other political and economic consequences, simply choosing a side in this conflict might not be the best option for the rest of the world. At the center of the panel lies the question whether, through technology and based on shared democratic values and human rights, Europe can offer something like a third option, a human-centered approach, as it is called, as an alternative to other nations in an otherwise polarized world. And based on that, whether Europe and Latin America and the Caribbean can expand their collaboration, not only to keep the idea of multilateralism as opposed to a G0 or G2 world alive, but also to use technology to advance societal and economic development, good governance, good practice, global citizenship, and to promote common values which can lead to setting new standards for how technology can be used. And for this, I'm joined by four guests who join us virtually but very much alive from all over the world. First, let me introduce Mario Cimoli, who joins us from Chile. He's the Deputy Executive Secretary of ECLAC, the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. Kim Jørgensen joins us from Belgium. He's the head of cabinet for the EU Commissioner Margrethe Vestager, who is the European Commissioner for Competition and Executive Vice President of the European Commission for a Europe Fit for the Digital Age. From California, we are joined by Jérôme Lanier, who is, among many things, a computer scientist and philosopher, writer, musician, and visual artist, and a pioneer in virtual reality. I'm not sure if he already joined, but I hope he will do so shortly. From Colombia, we are joined by Víctor Manuel Muñoz Rodriguez, who is an expert and professional in the field of digital technology and who currently serves the president of Colombia as the advisor for economic affairs and digital transformation. It's a great honor to have you all here. Thank you very much. I have a set of questions that might take some time until I address each of you, but please feel free at any time to engage, whenever you feel like it, because we want an actual lively discussion here, even though it's not that easy in this remote format that we have. This is such a broad and complex topic that I don't expect any actual news to use, but I hope we can get some ideas that point in the right directions. For this, we have about 45 to 50 minutes. And after that, we would like to give the audience the opportunity to ask questions. They can be handed in via the website Future Affairs. We have one exception. Mr. Jørgensen has to leave at 11:30, so he will not be around for the questions. Also, I would like to apologize that this is an all-male panel. We had some last-minute changes due to scheduling conflicts, and while we're very happy to have you four here, we would have had a more diverse panel under different circumstances. So, for me to shut up soon now, my first question goes to Mr. Jørgensen. But again, this is a discussion, so whenever you want to jump in, please do so. You're welcome to voice your views. Mr. Jørgensen, why Latin America and the Caribbean? It's a very diverse region faced with complicated issues and in part at least different interests. Some governments are also complicated. What makes it such an attractive partner for the EU?
I think EU has, and thank you very much for the invitation, EU and Latin America has a historical cooperation and something that we would actually only want to strengthen. I think it's very important also to do that in the digital field. As you said, we have to lead for what you could call a third way. We don't use the term the third way, but the current pandemic has certainly accelerated the trend on digitalization. And here, Europe's digital transformation is at the center of the Commission agenda. It's one of the twin transitions, the green and the digital transition. So we have set a very ambitious digital strategy, and we are now also reaching out in all our cooperation with third countries and of course Latin America here being a very important region in itself. And we know we have a lot of concrete and ambitious goals where we would want to strengthen our cooperation. For us, as you said, it's a human-centric approach. We are to position ourselves on the global digital map, and we place our core values, such as the respect of fundamental rights, the rule of law, and democratic principles at the center of our digital transformation. So we want the technology to serve humans, not the other way around. And if I may just mention two examples where I also want us to strengthen our cooperation with Latin America and the Caribbean is online platform. Online platforms, for example, has gained a huge influence on and economic power. Their behavior has an impact not only on free and fair competition among businesses, but also on our democracies, on our security and the quality of our information. So here we need to propose adequate regulatory framework. And just this week, the Commission will propose two flagship legislative proposal, one called Digital Service Act, one called Digital Market Act, which will set a broad reform of the EU rule and will create new responsibilities for platform. And this is something where I think we would also need to have a discussion with third countries, as I said, also Latin America and the Caribbean. And a second area where we would also make proposals next year is on the use of artificial intelligence. We would see artificial intelligence is extremely good and would be of huge value in many areas of life, but at the same time we have to make sure that it's based, again, respecting our values or human rights and the human dignity. So I think here EU can be the third global rule maker. That's how I will start. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for that answer. Could you explain a little more what is actually meant by a human-centered approach? We all know that the data-driven internet, data is the commodity, is what generates profits, what makes companies make money and thus innovate. So how do you want to get the rule of people over their own data back? What does this human-centered approach actually look like?
To make sure that what we do in the digital world and what we do on data is basically based on values of freedom, human rights, and respect of the human dignity. We have to make sure that for example, when it's using regulation on AI, that we take what we call a high-risk approach, where, for example, when you're introducing an algorithm to diagnose cancer, that then that algorithm is being tested according to our rules and will not be biased. I think that they have regulation and obligation for companies if they are to introduce new AI in very high-risk area. There will be a lot of areas where we don't think there will be a need for legislation if you want to use artificial intelligence to make a booking system or to make furniture. Here, you most probably don't need legislation, but when it comes to human and very sensitive public data, for example, within the health sector, you have to make sure that data is processed in a way that it won't hamper the rights of the individual citizen.
Mr. Cimoli, Latin America and the Caribbean have been historically influenced by the United States and more recently, especially economically, by China. What, from your perspective, should or could the EU offer to become an alternative? What can or should they offer that the others can't? What is your interest?
Good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. First of all, it's very difficult to say and to have a position for whole Latin America. You have to understand that it's completely different. What it means to be in Argentina, to be in Chile, in Mexico. Mexico is a really well-integrated economy with the United States. It's completely different. You have, for example, the repository of contents for digital economy, more or less, more than 90% are in the United States. You know, this very complex integrated economy. When you speaking about Latin America, there is really an enormous heterogeneity. You pass from Mexico, that is really integrated in manufacturing and so on, and also in digital network with the United States, to others economy. Take the case of Bolivia or Peru, other economy that has a different process of integration related more with the China market and so on. It's different. This is a very important point to have in your mind when you speak about that. That is, I came into the second question about the difference between what can offer Europe and the United States. Of course, this issue of human dignity is very important, it's very crucial, and I want to be very honest with that. Human dignity and human rights, we can put these concepts in an enormous asymmetries that exist between different countries and regions. For example, for Latin American people that work in informal sector with very low productivity, that people are invisible. Take the case of Colombia, take the case of Peru, take the case of other countries. These informal people that arrive to be more or less in many cases about the 50% of population. People is informal not because the people don't want to pay taxes. People is informal because it has a very vulnerable jobs, because the people don't have income, because the people don't have high productivity. Most of the people that has an enormous impact for COVID, these people that are out of the economy, quoted, out of the economy. And when you speak about human dignity for us, for Latin American people, is that this person, this informal activity can have, jobs, formal jobs, can have, for example, the capability to participate into the welfare state that is very segmented, very heterogeneous in Latin America, that the people can access to internet connection. For example, the recent data from Latin America said clearly that only the 60%, between 60 and 70% of the population achieved the internet capabilities. The other part remain outside. And we can show that in this recent period about teleeducation. More than 40% of scholars, younger scholars, can achieve to have a very good quality. And these asymmetries are very important. When we speak about human dignity and human rights, I want to be, if you speak a human right and human dignity, when you have an economy, the income per capita is about $30,000 and the income is more or less well distributed, it's completely different to have an economy where income per capita is about $10,000 and the income is very bad distributed. This is an important point. And I think it's a very good concept, but we have to go inside the concept. And the last one point about the United States of Europe, I think I agree completely with what say our colleague from Europe, and to have responsibility, to have normal package, to have regulation, and so on and so on. That is crucial. Data is an important factor. But you know what is the debate in Latin America? The debate in Latin America, many people say Europe is very well because they have good regulation, because they are thinking about the human rights and so on, but the innovative economy is the United States. And you can take Schumpeter from this side. Schumpeter said you have to leave the economy to innovate, and after of the innovation you regulate. You can regulate it. You can introduce competition policy. So on. Take the case today in the United States, where recently regulation and competition policies is going to be applied from Facebook to the expansion of Facebook in different areas. And clear is what the Clayman Act, the Sherman Act. There is two models. I don't want to say this is the debate. One is very good about regulation, but the other is great about innovation because they created the more massive innovation in ICT. If you take all of the firms that produce an innovation, more or less came from the United States. This is debate in Latin America. The people say, I think it is important, the distortion, the shot that can have this ICT on people, on dignity, on using of data. But we need to create innovation also. We need to create firms. What is the good composition of this policy? This is going debate, and honestly, it's a very important going debate. And of course, there is also the introduction of China about the enormous capability of China that can imitate. Imitation is, of course, it's an economy completely different. It's market-led economy, and market controlled economy, market more political controlled economy, very strong control. Of course, that is true. But on the other side, this economy has an enormous capability on imitation. And these three models is the debate. I think clearly is the debate. But to put clearly this debate, we have to have in our mind what is the situation of Latin America. Enormous asymmetry, enormous heterogeneities, human rights, the people that don't have jobs, access to internet, in rural areas is an enormous gap. And on this side, it's important to discuss with Europe not only about regulation and so on, that is crucial, but also how to have a flows of investment, how to stimulate together artificial intelligence, and so on and so on. How we can create. And I want to say one thing that is coming up recently by Víctor. Europe is important in Latin America because the more highest stock of investment of Europe is in Latin America. It's not in China and India. You understand that? And that is to continue to this flow and to discuss about that ideas we can have a driver. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And just as you said, of course, it's a very heterogeneous continent or region, not continent. It's a region, obviously. But what are the Europeans, I'm sure, are aware of this when they introduce a broad plan. But what would you say, Mr. Cimoli and or Mr. Jørgensen as well? What would be the common anchor points that they can start to increase this exchange, and even with all the heterogeneity, what are the things that apply maybe for everyone where Europe could start to collaborate?
If you want,
maybe. Yeah.
No, I want to say that it's very important. I agree completely about human dignity, human rights. This is a crucial point. But I put also the importance to establish more connection in, because if you take the investment of Euro in Latin America, if you define the quality of European investment in Latin America, most of the investment of Europe had the more human dignity quality. That is true because there's a very good relation with the trade unions. There is more a positive relation with environmental situation and so on. Europe, on the basis, have this point. That's a crucial issue. But I think for the new wave of digitalization, we need to find a more partnership, to find what is the way to where this investment can create network from one side and another side. How this network created employment from the Latin American side, that is very important, to absorb this informal activity, to diffuse technology, to create a more equalitarian position. And we think, my point is the following, I want to be very honest. Regulation is very good, but we can't remain only with regulation. We need to put something that have to do with, to create more cooperation between technological transfer, intellectual property rights on technology, creation, more networking activity between the two regions. Production not to be necessarily localized in one region. We can create it more on the, for example, taking pharmaceutical and so on. But this is the second step. Rules and regulation is good. How to create this real balance and real comprehension of asymmetries to produce more job, a good job, and more equality in Latin America too. That could be a very important mission from Europe.
Could I come in here?
Yes, of course.
Yes, I agree very much. I think the diversity you see in Latin America is actually also something you see in Europe. And within the digital field, we also have huge differences between the individual 27 EU member states. So we will also have some experience, I think, in how to better connect intra-continental wise, I think is a very good thing. But to talk about the very concrete examples, as far as I understand it today, there will be this joint ministerial statement endorsed where it's planned to establish a digital alliance between the EU and the Latin America and the Caribbean, where the aim is to support digital transformation and bring together the common support of development institutions, international financial institutions, and the private sector. And one of the first outcomes of this alliance will be the transatlantic submarine fiber optic cable called BELA between Portugal and Brazil. And the European has here invested more than 25 million in this project. And it will be sort of finalized next year during the Portuguese presidency in the first half of 21. I think this is going to be an extremely important project because that will create a new digital highway for knowledge and data exchange between South America and Europe. And the new cable will bridge the digital divide, boost development and competitiveness, and enhance business exchanges. And there, on top of this, there's a number of bilateral activities between individual EU member states and individual countries in Latin America. But I really think that the launch of BELA will really create a boost for the interconnectivity between Latin America and the Caribbean and EU. I think there will also see a lot of increased cooperation on 5G, on cybersecurity, which is another element where I think we from EU side will also set some standards that could also, I hope, be of interest and inspiration in the LAC countries.
Thank you. Yeah, building upon what you two said and what Mr. Cimoli said about the individual problems or challenges in the countries regarding the huge informal sector, for example, which is a big issue, of course, in Brazil, where I live as well. Fortunately, we have someone in this panel here who is involved in day-to-day government work and problems. Mr. Muñoz from Colombia, maybe you can say something about these things that need to be fixed first, if you want to say so, before we go to standards. In Colombia, of course, you also have a great level of inequality. You have a huge informal sector. And then, like all over the world, the COVID pandemic has, of course, increased all these problems. What are the main obstacles from your point of view for a better integration and use of data cooperation with Europe? What needs to be done in your country first to make the internet not just a tool of consumption, but also a tool of production?
Good morning, and thank you so much for the invitation. The first thing that I would like to say that for sure, COVID is a challenge for the country, but COVID was opportunity for the country too. I would like to mention before than talk about inequality, I would like to mention how we use the technology to improve the quality of life of the citizens in terms of the pandemic. The first thing is that we use technology to give access in terms of the educations, to move from 1 million of transactions in terms of telemedicine to more than 10 million per month in teleorientations users per month in the last month, and how we can design a subsidized program using technology through fintech solutions, and we give more than subsidized for more than 3 million people in terms of in the last months. And the message is that for sure we have a lot of challenge. For sure we have a lot of informal situation. We have a high rate of employment, but we can be working and we can be using technology to close the gaps that we have. And the pandemic gave us the opportunity to accelerate the implementation of this kind of technology in the different areas in the country. And that is that is an important point. That is the message that, for example, you have from the Fourth Industrial Revolution, you have for the WEF, in terms of that we can use the technology to close the gaps and to close the inequality that we have in the country. The second thing is that in terms of informal situation, we can be accelerating the smart regulation related with the digital economy, because at this moment we have a lot of opportunities to create new places work of the new jobs in the country to improve the situation that we have in terms of the employment that we have in the country. And in terms of data, we have been working in terms of the regulation related and how we can protect more, how we can have a smart regulation, and I would like to insist in that word, that how we can use the data in terms of the data protections, in terms of the algorithms that use artificial intelligence, how we can approach in an ethical framework to use the data, and in that case we can be working in the different roundtables with the European Union, with the US, with Asia, in terms of how we can use the technology and the data for to protect the human rights and to improve the quality of life of the citizens in the country.
Colombia also is a country, of course, greatly influenced by the US and by China. What, from your Colombian perspective, is the unique thing that Europe can bring to the table?
In terms of the approach that has Europe in terms of the data protection, in terms of the human rights, in terms of the have always in the center the citizens, is the most important approach that we can have and that we can receive from Europe in Colombia. That because the focus that has Europe in terms of the citizens, the human always is in the center of the solution, is important for us, and we can be working in that direction.
So, coming back to Mr. Cimoli, the problems that you described, of course, they have probably grown in the past years, at least as far as I observed myself traveling the continent. So is this actually a good timing that the EU starts this initiative in this time of decoupling between the United States and China, which isn't a problem in and by itself for everybody, when South America and Latin America and the Caribbean have these many things to fix themselves first? Should they do this first before they can actually speed up this dialogue with Europe, or is the timing right? Meaning, is this something you can actually afford to do now? Do you not have to fix other things first? Again, of course, speaking for the whole region, which is unjust, but...
No, but I think you put a very important point. I think it's very difficult to say that you have to fix, first of all, one problem and take secondly the other one. That is not the way. ICT technologies are compenetrated with every one of the other's activity, with production, with human rights, with rights, and everything is part of this. It's a component. It's a crucial component. I think it's a perfect time. It's a good time. I remember when European Union came more than 12 years ago here in Latin America. It created with ECLAC the program of ALICE. This was a very important program that created European Union in Latin America. It was a crucial program because it was access to ICT technology. And after of this program, we have developed an enormous interaction among countries. We created the governors, ministerial boards of Latin American ministers, where they work on ICT technology and have in the last 15 years with the creation of Europe, creating an enormous debate among the region with different policies so on. And today, for example, these processes put on the table the proposal of the digital Latin American market. That's an important, it was approved in Mexico 5 years ago. And this is an enormous proposal. It has to come hand by hand with Europe. Europe is not today that is doing that. Europe did that from now 15 years. That is an important point. Today is more important than ever. Why? Because all of the activity, all of the relation, all of the activity needed to resolve the Latin American problems require ICT technology. And you can see that when you look at what happened in the COVID crisis. ICT was crucial in production, in welfare state. If you look at also in production and in creation of employment and so on. At that point, I want to say, Europe is not the starting point. The starting point was many years ago. This is very important visionary action. And today, there is an enormous debate in the region about digital market. For example, last week, there was a meeting of Pacific Alliance. In the Pacific Alliance, the president of the all 4 countries decide to support the Pacific Alliance market on digital economy. This is a process that began with the European Union. But what they need today is more also to work on those channels that can solve the problems of Latin America. Important to creation. The question is to Europe, how we can work together to creation networks, capability in production, employment, mobility of the people. Because if you take human rights in ICT, but human rights also in mobility of peoples. Human rights is for United Nations, for us, is a very overview concept. You can put only in one point and to forget the others. It have to be together in the process. In that sense, we need to work together. And in policy for sustainability, crucial one, And for Latin America, it's more crucial because that Latin America is the region where the contribution of carbon economy is very low. It's more or less the 80%. Historical, the contribution of Latin America was very poor. On the other side, today we have an enormous impact from China, historical from Euro, and that. This asymmetry, this technology can solve or can be an access to solve the problems that Latin America has, but putting clearly the important asymmetries that we have, that have to be incorporated in this policy.
So, Mr. Jørgensen, how does Europe actually want to achieve this, to circumvent these, or to address these asymmetries? And adding to that, also the political aspect, of course. I understand that there's a lot of cooperation already on working level areas in international forums and talking about standards and everything. But of course, there's always the political aspect, and that has not always been easy with Latin America recently. We just remember from last year the conflict between French President Macron and Brazilian President Bolsonaro. Also, the question of sovereignty is always a big issue when Europe tries to give advice, so to speak, to the region. So how can you circumvent this? I mean, Europe has problems with Donald Trump, who's a difficult president, but the other region, Latin America, also has difficult presidents. What can you do differently here? What can you do better that makes you optimistic to be successful there?
Of course, we have all challenges. We have also challenges at EU level. That was mentioned, the question about innovation. We might lack innovation, but that's actually not the most important point and problem we have at EU level. That's just the scale-up possibility. We have quite a lot of AI professors and startups that are creating and are actually very, very innovative. The problem is that whenever you have a company in that sector who has some kind of a degree of success, then they are either being bought up by the American companies or Chinese companies. So here we need at EU level to sort of make it much more doable to have scale-up investment here, and I think there's a bit of the same problem in Latin America. I still think that this digital alliance is a very good one, and the physical connection between the two continents that will materialize next year, I still think that's actually an extremely good thing for sort of the possibilities also to make cooperation strengthened. And then again, EU's main strength has been standardization and the rule maker. I mentioned the GDPR as one thing. I'm quite sure also when we are talking with not only Latin America but also with Africa, with a lot of other third countries, they are looking towards EU as a third possible rule maker. So I think this is the area where we would need to work. It's clear that there are and has been political problems between EU and Latin America, and there might also, I mean, this will not be the last time, but the problem and the good thing is that both of our continents, we believe in multilateralism, and I think and hope we should be able to overcome the differences and to find good solutions.
You want to add something to this, Mr. Cimoli or Mr. Muñoz? What the political...
Yes, I would like to add something I would like to deep in terms of the Pacific Alliance, and that Colombia assumed the presidential pro tempore for the Pacific Alliance the last week. And basically, I would like to mention that one of the topics that we will work in the next months is related with the digital economy, but with focus in connectivity, with focus in talent. That is important to discuss about the digital skills more than the titles is more related with the digital skills that we need in the regions, and in terms of the interoperability, because at this moment we don't have interoperability in terms of the data in the different countries. And in terms of the smart regulations, for example, we have been working in Colombia in a sample regulatory in different areas, and that is one of the important topics that we will include in the discussion in the next weeks. In another component that I would like to deep is related with the cooperation between Europe and Latin America. And for example, in Colombia, we have been working. We have the first ethical framework for artificial intelligence, and we work in that in a strong relation with Europe. We have more than 50 participants from different areas, from different universities from Europe, that give us comments, that give us support in terms of develop this framework, and that is a framework that we launched 2 months ago. And that just to mention that we have been working in the region with Europe, we have been working in terms of the smart regulation, and we have been working to have in a digital agenda in the Latin American countries.
Thank you. I want to go a little bit to the human level, because every policy is made by humans, as is politics. And when I travel the region, which I do very frequently, I'm often encounter a sort of inhibition, if not reluctance, when it comes to big ideas that come from a different country, especially when they come from former colonial powers. So national sovereignty is, of course, a big issue for the countries in that region. What are the mistakes that need to be avoided in this transatlantic dialogue? How can we make sure that there is a cooperation on eye level? What needs to be done to earn the mutual trust? Or is that a given? I'm asking Mr. Muñoz, but as well, of course, Mr. Cimoli as well.
I think that you mentioned the most important word is that that is a dialogue. That is not an imposition. That is not a mandatory political or practice or regulatory. That we know that we have a lot to learn for other countries in terms of Europe, US, or Asia, but we have a countries that we have been working a lot in terms of how we can use technology, how we can introduce the technology, and how we can cooperate in that situation. And the most important and the most thing is that this is a dialogue. That is opportunity to share knowledge, that is opportunity to share practices, that is the opportunity to learn from the different perspectives, but all with that understanding that this is a dialogue and that this is not mandatory, that is not a practical that just we need to assume because was developed for other countries.
Mr. Cimoli, would you like to add something, or?
I agree with Víctor said. I think a dialogue is very important to have equal participation in the dialogue and to hear the others. That is crucial. But I think there is another important point that is crucial. Why is urgent to have a policy in Latin America? Because one of the conclusions that Tekla has on what's happened after this crisis of COVID is that the global economy is going to be more and more regionalized. That's what that mean. That means that it's going to be one Asia, very, very large, very strong. It's going to be in Europe, a very complementary, very diffused, very strong Europe. It's going to be a North American area where part of the Latin America is going to be integrated there, and these three region areas is going to have probably different policy, not only in terms of ICT, but also in industrial and technological policy. There is dialogue between Latin America and Europe in this context. We think that is very crucial. But it is the dialogue that Latin America needs. This is the scope. The scale is very important. Each country in the region think that by itself is going to achieve important results. We think it's difficult. Latin America needs more integration, and we think that digital is going to be a driver for that. Because if a country like Brazil think that only because it's Brazil, 200 million people, is going to be don't need of the other Latin American economies, it's the same if the German think that Denmark on Luxembourg and so on is not necessary for the integration. No, we need a scale. We need more debate on that scale. That is going to be an important debate with Europe. This experience to create a common digital market. That is a crucial debate. In that sense, it's important from one side for Europe to be in the table with a very important spirit and esperanza of the debate that has to be at the equal position. On the other part, Latin America need to understand that this policy to create this scale is very important to have a political dialogue also inside the region. That is a crucial one. Not because a country, the scale in this policy is crucial. Regulatory framework is if take one country and they take another country different, there is not regional market. We need more debate in that. I think the experience, the debate between Europe and Latin America. For Europe, it's important to have the experience with the good thing down, but also the bad thing to create the regional European market. Latin America needs to debate that issue because this is a technology that needs scale. And the second point that is a crucial one, we think that is the debate how we put in this context regulation of human rights crucial. Data protection crucial, but there is another one: how the private sector create activity. Because on the Latin American side, many of the Latin Americans want to put honesty on the debate. Say, of course, Europe has human rights very clear, but how we create an innovative economy like the American one? This is an important debate. It's not like black and white, but it's a debate, okay? And we have to be for probably it's also for Europe also to have a debate on Latin America, because Latin America can show that to create this an absorption for the labor market, we need alliance, public and private, that can create jobs and to be more innovative in our economy.
I would like to hand that over to Mr. Jørgensen. Debate about Latin America, of course, is also alive in Europe. We just have this debate about the Mercosur EU free trade agreement that still has not been put into effect. And it's having a hard time because of a lot of bad news that we see that comes from especially South America. So how can you address this? How important is this in the broader context, a concept of your initiative?
I think it is very important, and it is a very of a strategic and a high value importance for both our continents. And I know it has been very difficult negotiations in my former life before joining the European Commission. I was sitting in as an EU ambassador to negotiate that agreement, and I think actually in June last year we reached a political agreement for an ambitious, balanced, and comprehensive trade agreement. And currently we are now having difficult, I admit that, difficult technical discussions, but we are working forward on finalizing the text of the agreement. So I think it is, as I said, going to be an extremely important agreement, but it's not the only one. I think we will also, due to the experiences we have from the pandemic crisis, I agree that we will see an increased regionalization, but I don't think we will see it as something where we will close, for example, Europe, or close Latin America, or close Asia. But what we have learned during the crisis is that we need to have sort of safe and diverse supply chains, and that we have to rely on in all areas of economic life on different suppliers, which will only increase, I hope, the direct trade also between our regions. It's a fact that there might also, due to robotics and AI, there will be possibilities for doing productions in EU that was not possible before because it was too expensive. But we will, of course, have to continue to trade in this open environment, and here I can only see a chance for increased cooperation.
Thank you.
I want to say something about that. It is possible. I think I agree completely. I think there is an important areas where we can have put Latin America, Caribbean, and Europe together. I think it's more cooperation on BELA. Okay, transatlantic fiber optic. That is crucial to continue with that. Second one, we need more to work on this transatlantic fiber optic cable, to put more attention on that, because how we can relate on the one side or the other, economic activity, production activity, science and technology activity. Second one, to put more the high-performing computing analysis. Europe is working a very lot to computing performance high quality with enormous regulation and standard to base it on human value. That is crucial. We want to work together with Latin America and Caribbean, how to put more network. Horizon programs could be one part of this, but how to can be related. Research and innovation, ICT standard, regulation, cooperation in telecommunication, digital media, online platform, e-commerce, cybersecurity. We need now to put this value of human rights and to put more and more and more and more on this area, and to work together, creating and understanding asymmetries, because it's important that the region can solve this structural, consistent asymmetry that creates an enormous inequality and stable, many times social and political conditions. I think put a good virus on this activity. The good virus is how do we solve this activity, this asymmetry, how we can work together in this area. I think it is an important way to work together in the next future. And I think this pillar that is going to be signed in Berlin could be an enormous platform. And also, don't forget, we need job, we need employment, we need people to come out of this terrific, to this terrible situation that is informality, bad job, and very bad income or non-income at all.
Thank you. For the remaining time, there's two more issues I would like to briefly tackle with you before we hand over to the questions from the audience. There are also some already. Unfortunately, I would have loved to discuss this also with Mr. Lanier, who I just heard is quite ironically offline. We cannot reach him, so we will have to do this without him, but I'm sure you can also be of a great insight here. It's no secret that underlying all these initiatives is something else as well that you hear when you talk to politicians on both sides of the Atlantic, really, and if you talk to the Foreign Office in Germany, and that is that we're also currently seeing a competition of systems, really, of systems of society, and that's a point where Europe and Latin America and the Caribbean can take a stand. The conflict between US and China shows that the common belief that free societies and free market economy go together and mean economic success is kind of in jeopardy. Now we see democracy struggling. China, which is not a democracy, is actually prospering and probably selling itself as an alternative to democracies in order to still have people lead a good life. And at the same time, we see that, especially in Latin America, the acceptance of democracy has been in a constant decline in the past years, as all surveys show. So what needs to be done to counter this? How much can this emphasis on common shared values between Europe and Latin America and the Caribbean be a statement in that direction to turn this around or to decide this competition of the systems? This goes to all of you.
Should I start then? At EU side, I think we have always sort of start all our cooperation with third countries with what do we have in common, and cooperation basically always comes first, and we have made that very clear in our cooperation with all our strategic partners. You've seen that just the 2nd of December, the Commission adopted a strategic communication on our relations with the US, and we offered a new transatlantic agenda for global change. We have also proposed to work closely with the US on digital matters, such as the responsibility of online platform and big tech. We will also want to cooperate closely with them on standardization, on artificial intelligence, and that's the exact same areas where I think that the more common approach by Latin America and EU, for example, on multilateralism and the importance of the human-centric approach, I think that's something we should bring into this debate. But it's also clear that when we look to the East, we are seeing a more challenging situation, and we have seen in our strategic outlook from last year communication, we are now saying very explicitly that the EU sees China as a negotiating partner, an economic competitor, and a systemic rival. And concretely, it means that we would pursue cooperation where we can. We would also express our disagreements where we must, and therefore I think that also should be an element in our dialogue and our cooperation between EU and LAC. We had actually a very good constructive digital dialogue between Executive Vice President Vestager and the Deputy Prime Minister of China. It was an open and constructive meeting, but of course also reflecting very much the areas where we don't agree. So I think we have to talk and act more together between LAC and EU.
Mr. Cimoli, what can be done to increase the trust and democracy again in your region?
I think this is how said before. This is a crucial issue. It's very important. Trust and democracy have to be sustained, and but sustaining is not only to say that; it's to have policy that sustain that. And policy have to be a very important component on human rights and transparency and so on and so on. But on the other side, we need to apply policy that can create a development processes, a new development processes, because the model that we have until recently is not producing the very good result. And have to create this policy and how ICT technology is across all of the activity in the production, in the welfare state, in the state. We need to integrate this policy in the very in terms of rights, human rights, but also to be efficient and to achieve all of the part of the population. Only if we do all of these policies together, it's going to be an important result. About competitive society, About competitive society, I don't know if it's really an issue. What we like in Latin America, ECLAC many times say that the society, European society with the welfare and the good income distribution and access and so on is an example of the world economy. We know that an economy like Europe, with the welfare state that Europe has, is an example for Latin America. I think it's important because it's part of the issue to solve inequality. In that sense, the alliance with Europe is a crucial one. But on the other side, I want to put on the debate that this technology is going to be implemented in the future, and this technology is going to have an enormous impact and global value change and firms and activity and employment. And also, when we speak with Europe, it's important to understand together how is going to be the impact of that, and to understand how we can create it global change between Europe and Latin America, and to produce Latin America to have transfer of technology, Europe to have investment here, but to integrate in both economy more and more and more, because that is an important point. And I think we have to break this regionalization, because if the regionalization of the global economy is going to be in the future and going to be strong and strong, it's difficult for economies that have an enormous problems to find a space for their policy. I think that is an important issue, and we have to debate around this point. And the other way, Europe has an important that is regulation and competition policy. Because, for example, I'll give you an example. More of the 80% of the employment in Latin America is small and medium firms. Most of the firms has a very low productivity, but these firms don't have a space in the digital platform, because we need competition policy, regulation policy, and so on. There going to be an enormous important exchange of experiences, policy, and action together with Europe to create this platform where small and medium firms can have market for Latin America, but also market from the small and medium firm in Latin America in Europe. And that is the way to work together. It's putting all of this agenda together and to work it intensely on that.
Mr. Muñoz, would you like to add something from the concrete perspective of Colombia? Otherwise, we move on to Q&A.
I would like to mention a few things, and basically that in terms of transparency, it's important to work basically in topics like open data, in topics like transparency for the users, transparency related with policy, bids, use of data, in terms of how we can include collaborative participation through the use of technology, how we can give more access of information for citizens, and in terms of competitive, how we can introduce more technology for small and medium business in terms of the inclusion and equality. And in terms of the equality too, I would like to mention that we can work together in topics like inclusion, gender equality, data protection, ethical framework for artificial intelligence, and human rights. That just for the Colombian, that is the perspective for the Colombian country.
Thank you. I would just like to say goodbye and thank you to Mr. Jørgensen. He has to leave right on time. 5 seconds and you have to go. Thank you very much for being here, and hope to talk to you soon again. Well, with that, I would like to hand over to the questions from the audience, and I will have to look at them myself first. I will just start with the one the team put on top, which is from Madeleine Blidaru. The question is, are we prepared to manage the risks of decoupling, particularly on the liberalization of ideas and business? There's no specific addressant, so it's up to you, Mr. Cimoli and Mr. Muñoz. Unfortunately, Mr. Lanier is not here. So who would like to answer that? Are we prepared to manage the risks of decoupling, particularly of the liberalization of ideas and businesses?
It's very to have a decoupling is a debate that also is not only related to ICT. It's more related also to policy, action, production, global value chain, and so on. The risk. I think this process is not only processes because we have a political people that one day came and said, I want to be sovereignist, because there is a problem, a pressure of middle classes in Europe and United States, and also recent in Latin America. The middle classes don't see that the global system is bringing to them the benefits that they want to have. This is many times because there is, for example, ideological concept about the benefits of trade that also Europe has. Trade many times produce good benefits, and many times trade produce a negative effect. That's what's happened, for example, with the middle class in Europe, with the intensity with trade with China that affect people and workers there, and these people move political toward a more sovereignist position. This is a social problem. It's not ideological. It's don't come. If you read that because there is a good and bad and evils, no, that's really completely different. This is a social problem. Read more on that, and technology is part of this process. Now, ICT in this process is not good and bad. It's a technology. Technology can be dominated, can be used, can be incorporated in different ways. Depend on the society, depend on the rules, and depend on the capability to be more to create this impact of technology more equal. That is very important. And I think the debate have to be around inside the countries by itself, and to understand how this technology produce equal impact for people that are looking for job, the people looking for capability, and so on and so on, but also how this technology can be a driver to create it more participation and more democracy. That is the basis. You remember when the people say, now is coming internet and we are going to have a very good democracy, everything is going to come in good. You remember that 15 years ago? That doesn't happen because the people that wrote on technology, Polanyi, Schumpeter, and so on, understood clearly that the technology is not good, but also is not ugly. Technology is technology, and you have to have a society production to look the way to use this technology for the benefit of the whole society with equality. Okay, that is the point. If you don't have this capability as political, if the agreement don't have this capability like agreement, technology is doing what technology have to do, good or bad, but it's technology.
I would like to go, unless you want to add something, Mr. Muñoz, I would like to go to the next question.
Just few things is that for the reason we work in terms of the policy related that we use the technology to protect equality, inclusion, social benefits, and basically human rights. That's it.
Next question comes from Matthias Bock. He asks that the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, which is this, just for the audience, is this huge new free trade agreement for Southeast Asia and China, was signed in November. How do you judge its impact on the topic at hand that we just talked about? And is it a way for China to pull countries into its hemisphere? Also, of course, in the way technology is, the use of technology is being approached. This is again up to both of you. But I guess to Mr. Cimoli first.
I don't know. This is an agreement that is at the moment it's an intention to see an agreement. It's not concrete. Of course, this agreement is an agreement that has an important impact on the economic side, because this agreement is going to create it more locally global change in the Asian area. Is what I said about regionalization is going to be part of this regionalization policy. That is coming out. It's a reality. But on the other side, we have to understand that many countries, also China, are very pragmatical in the agreement. If you say, I want to be an example. If you arrive in Latin America, if you said, I put clear two experiences. If you say, I want to come in with a policy First of all, you have to be very perfect in human rights. Secondly, you have to be very perfect in democracy. Third, you have to be, and the people is looking for job. The people is looking to be integrated in a formal activity. And on the other side, and wherever part of the world, for Venus, for Venus, for other, where they say, don't worry, I give you support investment to give job. Probably the people is going to decide to have a job immediately and don't have the human right later, because when you don't have job, we can see that is happening in formal activity today. This is an important life pressure, In that sense, we have to understand the difference policy, and we have to modulate, we have to graduate it, because we have to understand this structural asymmetry. If we have only in terms of principle, I don't know if we're going to have the good results. We need to have principle, but you have to have policy that show the capability to reduce asymmetry and to create a process of more job, more income, more development in Latin America too. That is not only a responsibility of Europe, of course. It's first of all the problem responsibility of each country in the region, of the whole region as a whole. But in the term of creating capabilities, I think it's important to graduate, because also the political action and the political cooperation policy is going to be different. Principles are crucial and important, and we by ECLAC and the United Nations support that in an enormous way. But of course, we need to understand asymmetries and difficulties that the middle income economy like Latin American has at the moment. And this is very important. Take the problem of the debts, take the problem of employment, and so on. If you don't understand very pragmatically this issue, it's difficult to pass the issue, the problem, to solve the problem only with the principle. You understand? That is a crucial issue to debate, important, practically.
Mr. Muñoz, how strong is the pull of China? And is it something that could force you to actually decide which side you choose or with whom you work together closely?
In terms of China, sorry if I understand the question, is what is the present that we have the China here in Colombia?
The pull, like the question from Mr. Bock was, if this RCEP partnership could be a way of China to pull more countries into its hemisphere. And of course, China is very invested in South America and your region. How strong is the pull of China from your Colombian perspective? And is this actually rivaling potentially any efforts by the European Union? Just building on that question.
The dimension is not just China. Basically, we have a lot of international investment here in Colombia from European companies, from US companies, from Asian companies. And just to mention that in terms of ICT, Colombia is a network neutrality. That means that we don't have any biases related in terms of technology, in terms of providers. Is also we have a market and we have is more a policy related with what is the kind of standards, the kind of cybersecurity, the kind of the conditions that we need to provide for citizens, and that is the standard that we have in the country. We don't have any particular biases related with the technology from different countries. In terms of the presence here in Colombia, yes, the Asian companies have a lot of presence in the country. They invest a lot in terms of infrastructure. They have a lot of investment in terms of the technologies companies, but also the American and European companies too.
We actually have 5 minutes left, and we have one very concrete question to Mr. Muñoz. And it's not exactly on this topic, but I think it touches us very well. And so I hope we have the time for that, since we didn't have Mr. Lanier here. And this is, what are the main challenges of Colombia? It's from Sören Pjord. I hope I pronounced the name rightly. What are the main challenges of Colombia regarding the peace agreement implementation? And how does digital technology, or can it actually contribute to that?
In terms of the peace agreement implementation, the results are under the table. Show that never before the country did more than now in terms of implementation, and we have been using technology in terms of the topics like cadastre, multi-propose, in how we can use the information, how we can use the technology for inclusion, how we can use the technology in terms of the gender equality, and that are the topics that we have been introducing with the team that work. That is not my area, is technology, and how we can use that topics in terms of the use the resources that they have in terms of in the rural areas, in terms of the economy, in terms of the training, in terms of the approach, the business, and that is the topic that we can say in that is that we have been working a lot in terms of the use technology in every area, in every sector in the country, and that is the approach that we can have in that is that Colombia have been working a lot in the implementation. We have been working and we have been putting all resources that are necessary in that process, and the technology is one of the supports that the team of the government has in terms of the implementation.
Well, we're almost at the end, and I had a question for all four of you, which are just two of you now, but I would still like to ask it as a kind of a final remark. Like, after all the complicated issues that we spoke about and all the obstacles that there are in the way, what is the best scenario in short term that Europe and LAC could strive for? What are the next steps that actually are in concrete reach, in your opinion? Whoever wants to start.
If you want, I think that what is really important is that we said before that Europe is clearly an important player and supporter of multilateralism. Latin American countries also, Colombia is an example of that. I think this debate of many of the debate have to be done at the level of the United Nations. That's a crucial one. The United Nations could be an institution that where this debate and this policy action and the dialogue between different standards and policies could be done. I don't say that it's going to be solved there, but the debate has to be done. That is very important, because if we leave this situation, each region by itself, this process could be don't be stopped, and is going to be more radicalized technology, because the effect is not clearly neutral. And I think we think that the clear space to do that is United Nations. To have a debate on that it has to be done, and to be very realistic in the role of internet, human rights, cooperation, and so on. United Nations and ACLAC, of course, we are the basis for that debate. Taking clearly, that is important, I want to repeat, the important asymmetries in access to technology and different economic situation and access to intellectual property right, the impact of global warming, and so on and so on. Taking this asymmetry on the terrain is important to have the debate, and this debate has to be done now, because if we don't take this multilateral action, it's a problem. Europe and Latin America has this DNA, has this capability. They have both regions have this will. This agreement signed now in Berlin could be the basis for that, but we have to put this agreement in the more global debate. That's a crucial one.
Well, thank you very much. This is exactly the time we have. Thank you so much for staying with us, Mr. Cimoli, Mr. Muñoz. Hope to talk to you again someday. And thank you very much to the audience for listening. And now I hand the data stream back to Mariana. Goodbye.